the moment you master your inner world, the outer world loses its power to disturb your peace. Welcome, warriors of wisdom, to a journey that will transform not just how you react to others, but how you experience life itself. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you the most profound secret that ancient philosophers discovered thousands of years ago, yet most people today have never truly understood. This isn't about suppressing your emotions or becoming cold and distant. This is about achieving a level of inner mastery that makes you absolutely unshakable, regardless of what chaos surrounds you. Every relationship you have, every interaction you encounter, every challenging person you meet will become an opportunity for you to demonstrate your newfound power. Stay with me until the very end, because what I'm about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about anger, peace, and personal freedom. A revolutionary truth that will set you free is this: no one else has the power to make you angry or bothered. This isn't just positive thinking or wishful philosophy. This is the fundamental reality of human consciousness that Marcus Aurelius wrote about in his private journal nearly 2,000 years ago. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when a colleague takes credit for your work, when a family member criticizes your choices, your immediate reaction is to believe that they are the cause of your emotional turbulence. But this is the greatest illusion that keeps you trapped in a cycle of reactivity and suffering. The Stoics understood that between stimulus and response lies a sacred space, and in that space lies your power to choose. Epictetus, who was once a slave but became one of history's greatest teachers of freedom, taught that we cannot control what happens to us, but we have absolute dominion over how we interpret and respond to what happens to us. Your anger isn't caused by external events, it's caused by your judgments about those events. When you truly grasp this principle, you realize that every moment of disturbance is actually a moment where you're unconsciously choosing to give your power away to someone else. Think about the people who seem to remain calm in the face of chaos. They haven't developed thicker skin or learned to suppress their emotions. They've discovered the profound truth that their inner state is their responsibility and their choice. This isn't about becoming passive or allowing others to walk over you. This is about operating from a position of strength rather than reactivity. When you understand that your emotional state is generated from within, not imposed from without, you begin to reclaim the sovereignty over your own experience that is your birthright as a conscious human being. The Buddha taught that suffering comes not from pain itself, but from our resistance to pain. When someone speaks harshly to you, the words themselves are just vibrations in the air. The suffering comes from the story you tell yourself about what those words mean, about you, about the relationship, about your worth. Viktor Frankl, surviving the Nazi concentration camps, discovered that even in the most extreme circumstances, we retain the freedom to choose our attitude toward what happens to us. He wrote that everything can be taken from a person but one thing: the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. This understanding transforms everything. Instead of being a victim of other people's moods, opinions, and behaviors, you become the sovereign ruler of your own emotional kingdom. When your boss is having a bad day and takes it out on you, you recognize that their behavior is information about their internal state, not a referendum on your value. When a stranger is rude to you in a store, you understand that their rudeness is their suffering spilling over, not an attack on your character. When a family member pushes your buttons, you realize that those buttons exist within you and you have the power to disconnect them. This doesn't happen overnight. It requires constant vigilance and practice. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to notice where you're giving your power away and consciously choose to reclaim it. The ancient Stoics practiced daily reflection, examining their reactions and responses, identifying where they lost their center and how they could respond differently next time. This practice of self-observation without self-judgment gradually builds the muscle of conscious choice that makes you emotionally unshakable. The second key to never being bothered by anyone lies in transforming your relationship with difficult emotions themselves. Most people try to avoid anger, push it down, or express it explosively. But there's a third way that the ancient wisdom traditions discovered and modern neuroscience now confirms. You can learn to transmute the raw energy of anger into clarity, strength, and compassion. This is the art of emotional alchemy, turning the lead of reactive emotions into the gold of conscious response. When you feel that familiar surge of irritation or anger beginning to rise, instead of either suppressing it or expressing it, you pause and breathe deeply into the sensation. The Stoic philosopher Seneca advised that when anger begins to stir, we should immediately ask ourselves whether our response will make the situation better or worse. This moment of conscious inquiry creates space between you and the emotion, allowing you to respond from wisdom rather than react from conditioning. The Buddhist tradition offers us the practice of loving kindness, even toward those who trigger us most. This isn't about becoming a doormat or pretending that harmful behavior is acceptable. It's about recognizing that the person who is acting out is likely suffering themselves, and your anger only adds more suffering to an already painful situation. When you can hold both firm boundaries and compassionate understanding simultaneously, you achieve a level of emotional mastery that makes you virtually unshakable. You learn to see difficult people not as enemies to defeat, but as unconscious teachers, showing you exactly where your inner work still needs attention. The ancient alchemists sought to transform base metals into gold, but the real alchemy was always internal. The external experiments were metaphors for the transformation of consciousness itself. When you feel anger arising, you can choose to see it as raw energy that can be channeled into productive action. That surge of adrenaline and focused attention that comes with anger can be redirected into clarity of thought, determination to solve problems, or compassionate action to help others. The Taoists understood that every emotion contains its opposite. Within anger lies the potential for great compassion. Within frustration lies the seed of breakthrough clarity. Rumi, the great Sufi poet, wrote about welcoming all emotions as guests in the house of your being. Even anger, he suggested, might be clearing space for some new joy. This doesn't mean indulging in destructive emotions, but rather developing the capacity to feel deeply without being overwhelmed, to experience the full spectrum of human emotion without losing your center. The Samora developed this principle in their training, learning to remain calm and clear-minded even in the face of life-threatening situations. They called it Fudoshin, the immovable mind that can acknowledge intense emotions without being controlled by them. Modern neuroscience has discovered that emotions are actually temporary neurochemical events that last only about 90 seconds in the body. The story we tell ourselves about the emotion is what keeps it alive and growing. When you practice emotional alchemy, you learn to feel the pure energy of the emotion without getting caught up in the narrative that usually accompanies it. You might notice the physical sensations of anger, the heat in your chest, the tension in your jaw, the increased heart rate, without immediately jumping to conclusions about what it means or what you should do about it. This creates the space for conscious choice rather than unconscious reaction. The third key involves cultivating such a strong sense of inner authority that external opinions and behaviors lose their power to disturb your equilibrium. This goes beyond simple confidence or self-esteem. This is about developing what the Stoics called the inner citadel, an unassailable fortress of self-knowledge and self-acceptance that no external force can penetrate. When you know who you are at your core, when you've done the deep work of understanding your values and living in alignment with them, other people's judgments and actions become like waves crashing against the shore of your being. They may make noise, but they cannot move the mountain. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote about self-reliance, the radical act of trusting your own inner guidance above the opinions and expectations of others. But this isn't about arrogance or isolation. True inner authority comes from humility, from recognizing that you are both infinitely valuable as a unique expression of consciousness and simultaneously just one small part of the vast web of existence. This paradoxical understanding creates a kind of psychological immunity to the need for external validation or the fear of external criticism. When someone tries to provoke you, insult you, or manipulate you emotionally, your inner authority allows you to see their behavior as information about their internal state rather than a reflection of your worth. You can remain curious rather than defensive, compassionate rather than reactive. This doesn't mean you don't set boundaries or protect yourself from genuinely harmful behavior. It means you do so from a place of strength and clarity rather than wounded reactivity. Your responses become conscious choices rather than automatic reactions. The development of inner authority requires a deep and honest examination of your own motivations, fears, and unconscious patterns. Socrates famously declared that the unexamined life is not worth living, and this examination is the foundation of true inner strength. When you understand your own psychological triggers, when you've made peace with your own shadows and imperfections, other people's attempts to push your buttons simply don't work anymore, because you've already disconnected those buttons through self-awareness and self-acceptance. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us about the concept of dharma, living in alignment with your highest purpose and deepest values. When your actions flow from this inner authority rather than from external pressure or expectation, you develop what Krishna calls equanimity in success and failure. You become like a tree with deep roots that can bend with the storm without being uprooted. The opinions of others become like weather patterns, sometimes pleasant, sometimes challenging, but never capable of defining your essential nature. This inner authority also comes from embracing what Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, rather than who others expect you to be. This takes tremendous courage, because it means disappointing some people, setting boundaries that others might not like, and standing alone sometimes in your convictions. But the reward is immense. A life lived from authentic self-expression, rather than reactive compliance or rebellion. When you know yourself deeply and accept yourself completely, including your flaws and limitations, other people's approval becomes a nice bonus, rather than a desperate need. The ancient Chinese sage Zhuangzi told stories of people who had achieved such inner authority that they could walk through life completely unperturbed by external circumstances. They had learned what he called Wu Wei, effortless action that flows from inner alignment rather than forced effort. When your actions come from this deep place of inner authority, they carry a natural power and authenticity that others instinctively respect, even if they don't always agree with you. The fourth key reveals the profound power of what Lao Tzu called Wu Wei, or effortless action. When someone is being difficult, aggressive, or unreasonable, our instinct is often to match their energy, to fight fire with fire. But this approach only escalates conflict and leaves everyone more disturbed than before. The masters of emotional intelligence have discovered that there's tremendous power in conscious non-resistance, in responding to aggression with calm presence rather than reactive defense. This isn't about being passive or weak. This is about being like water, which Tao Te Ching tells us is the softest thing in the world, yet it can wear away the hardest stone. When you don't resist someone's anger or aggression, when you don't take their emotional state personally, something remarkable happens. Their energy has nothing to push against, and it often dissipates naturally. You become like an Aikido master, using the opponent's force to redirect, rather than meeting force with force. Jesus taught us to turn the other cheek, not as an act of submission, but as a demonstration of inner strength so profound that external aggression cannot touch it. Gandhi showed the world how nonviolent resistance could topple empires. These weren't weak responses. They were expressions of such inner power that they transformed not just the individuals who practiced them, but entire societies. When you learn to respond to difficult people with conscious non-resistance, you often find that they either calm down naturally or simply move away from your peaceful energy. You become a force for harmony rather than conflict wherever you go. The practice of conscious non-resistance begins with understanding that resistance creates persistence. What you resist persists, and what you accept transforms. When someone is angry with you, your natural impulse might be to defend yourself, to explain why they're wrong, to justify your position. But this defensive energy often escalates the conflict, because it gives the other person something to push against. Instead, you can practice what the Buddhists call non-reactive awareness. You can listen to their anger without absorbing it, acknowledge their feelings without taking responsibility for their emotions, and respond from a place of centered calm rather than triggered reactivity. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat or failing to protect yourself from genuine harm. True non-resistance actually requires tremendous strength and courage. It takes more inner power to remain calm in the face of aggression than it does to react with counter-aggression. The martial arts teach us that the strongest response to force is often not opposing force, but redirecting it. When someone comes at you with emotional aggression, you can redirect that energy by remaining curious rather than defensive, by asking questions rather than making accusations, by seeking to understand rather than to be understood. The Sufi tradition speaks of becoming like a reed that bends with the wind but doesn't break. This flexibility isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The reed survives the storm that destroys the mighty oak because it knows how to yield without surrendering its essential nature. When you practice conscious non-resistance, you maintain your inner integrity while avoiding unnecessary conflict. You become someone who can disagree without being disagreeable, who can stand firm in your values without being rigid in your responses. Ancient Taoist masters understood that the softest things in the world overcome the hardest things. They observed that water, which offers no resistance, can carve through solid rock given enough time. Your peaceful presence can have the same effect on difficult people and challenging situations. Instead of adding more heat to an already inflamed situation, you become a cooling presence. Instead of contributing to the chaos, you become a point of stability that others can orient themselves around. The fifth and final key reveals the ultimate secret. When you truly master your own inner state, you become a transformative presence in the lives of others. Your calmness becomes contagious. Your peace becomes a gift you give to everyone you encounter. This isn't about trying to change other people, which always creates resistance. This is about becoming so centered in your own being that your very presence invites others to find their own center. The ancient Chinese philosopher Mencius taught that virtue is like the North Star. It doesn't move, but it causes all the other stars to revolve around it. When you embody true emotional mastery, you become like that North Star in your relationships and interactions. People feel safer around you because they sense that you won't be triggered by their emotional storms. They feel inspired by your example of what's possible when someone takes full responsibility for their inner world. This transformation happens not through preaching or trying to teach others, but through the silent power of embodiment. Your family members begin to argue less in your presence. Your co-workers find themselves naturally more collaborative when you're in the room. Strangers respond to you with unexpected kindness. This isn't magic. It's the natural result of what happens when someone stops contributing to the collective unconsciousness and starts radiating conscious awareness instead. You become a healing presence in a world that desperately needs more peace and wisdom. The power of presence is something that every great spiritual teacher throughout history has understood and embodied. When you read about the Buddha, Jesus, or other enlightened beings, people consistently report that just being in their presence created profound shifts in consciousness. They didn't need to argue or communicate anyone of anything. Their very being communicated truths that words could never convey. You have this same potential within you. When you cultivate deep inner peace and emotional mastery, you become a transmission of possibility for everyone around you. This principle operates through what scientists now call emotional contagion. Our nervous systems are constantly reading and responding to the emotional states of others. Mirror neurons in our brains automatically attune to the energy we encounter. When you maintain a state of calm centeredness, especially in challenging situations, you're literally broadcasting that state to everyone around you. Your nervous system becomes a tuning fork that helps others find their own equilibrium. This is why some people have the ability to walk into a tense room and immediately shift the energy simply by their presence. The ancient Greeks had a concept called arete, which means excellence of character or virtue. They understood that true virtue isn't something you do, it's something you become. When you embody the qualities of patience, compassion, wisdom, and inner peace, these qualities naturally influence everyone in your sphere of influence. You become what the Taoists called a sage, someone whose very existence benefits the world without any need for action or effort. Your peace becomes a sanctuary that others can rest in. Your stability becomes an anchor that others can rely on during their own storms. This doesn't mean you become responsible for other people's emotions or that you try to fix everyone around you. True transformative presence comes from taking complete responsibility for your own inner state while releasing all attachment to controlling or changing others. You become like the sun, which shines equally on all things without discrimination or effort. Your light naturally dispels darkness wherever it reaches, not because you're trying to eliminate darkness, but simply because light and darkness cannot coexist in the same space. When you embody true emotional mastery, you become a beacon of possibility, showing others through your example what it looks like to live from a place of unshakable inner peace. The path to never being angry or bothered by anyone isn't about becoming emotionally numb or developing an attitude of superiority. It's about awakening to the profound truth that your inner world is your domain, and no one else can enter that sacred space without your permission. When you master these 5 keys, understanding the true source of disturbance, practicing emotional alchemy, developing unshakable inner authority, embracing conscious non-resistance, and becoming a transformative presence, you don't just change your own life. You become part of the solution to the anger and conflict that plague our world. Every moment of irritation becomes an opportunity to practice. Every difficult person becomes a teacher, showing you exactly where your mastery still needs attention. Every challenge becomes a chance to demonstrate the incredible power that comes from taking full responsibility for your inner experience. This is the path of the emotional warrior, the person who conquers not others, but their own reactive patterns and unconscious habits. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. Remember, the wisdom of ages is not meant to remain as beautiful ideas in your mind, but to be lived and embodied in your daily experience. Every interaction you have from this moment forward is a chance to practice these principles and discover the incredible freedom that comes from emotional mastery. You have everything within you right now to never be bothered by anyone again. The only question is whether you'll choose to use it. Go forth and be the calm in the storm, the peace in the chaos, and the light in the darkness. The world is waiting for the gift that only you can give.